In this way, all right-wing politicians, including Franz von Papen, were purged, and the old scarecrow, Grand Chancellor Hindenburg, died. Then Hitler created a super powerful office that combined the president and prime minister with an invincible enabling act. He's the Führer, Hitler who made Germany a dictatorship of the Nazi Party, prepared for revenge to make up for Germany's bitter defeat in World War I. Germany unilaterally abrogated the Treaty of Versailles, which it had made with the victorious countries as a defeated country in the past, and declared the rearmament of the German army. After World War I, there was a demilitarized zone called Rhineland between France and Germany, where German troops were sent to protest. At this time, Allied powers such as France and Britain left Germany alone. Even the Allied powers victorious in World War I had suffered so much war damage, and could not think that there would be another war in which tens of millions of people would die. However, seeing the unresponsive Allied powers, Hitler thought he had won the Battle of Spritz and excitedly produced tanks and fighters. And Germany came up with an ambitious plan, the name of which was the Lebensraum Initiative. Lebensraum means place to live in German. It was the dream of securing a place for Germanic people to live in Europe. That is, taking all European land and establishing a great Germanic empire. His first destination was a glimpse of his homeland Austria in 1938. Without communicating with the Austrian Chancellor, Hitler's German forces invaded Austria. Unexpectedly, however, the Austrians warmly welcomed the Nazi German army, and Hitler took his homeland very comfortably. His next prey was Czechoslovakia. At that time, Czechoslovak territory was pushing through the middle of Germany. Most of its people, the inhabitants of the westernmost region of Sudetenland, were of German descent. Hitler argued that the inhabitants of Sudetenland were mostly Germanic, so they too should join the Lebensraum. As Hitler continued to invade European land in such a reckless way, the Allies, including Britain, could not just keep watching. So, in September 1938, representatives of the Allied powers, including Britain and France, went to Munich, Germany, to negotiate, and this pact was called the Munich Agreement. Germany agreed to the proposal that the British Prime Minister arbitrated. Yes, Germany took the Sudetenland, but not interfere with Czechoslovakia anymore. The reason Britain and France came out with such a weak stance was because they could not afford to stop Germany. And just 6 months later, Hitler backstabbed the Allied powers and invaded Czechoslovakia, and the Munich Agreement was stigmatized as the worst fraudulent agreement in history. Poland was now Hitler's next prey after Austria and Czechoslovakia. Part of Poland was originally German territory, but Germany had given it back to Poland after losing the First World War. Hitler demanded the territory back because it was originally German land. Naturally, Poland rejected and intended to invade under the pretext. But when Hitler thought about it, he kept warning about the powerful country to the right of Poland, the Soviet Union. If Germany continued to expand its territory like this and then fought with the Soviet Union, if the Soviet Union intervened again as in World War I, the nightmare of being caught between the Soviet Union to the east and France to the west was not to be repeated. So Hitler negotiated secretly with Stalin, invading Poland, which is sandwiched amicably between Germany and the Soviet Union. Germany to the west, the Soviet to the east. This was the Non-Aggression Pact signed on August 23, 1939. Hitler had nothing to fear now. Even if they fought against Britain and France in the West like in World War I, there would be no chance of getting backstabbed by the Soviet Union from behind. Originally, Britain, France, and Russia were allies in World War I. But the Russia of that time collapsed and the communist Soviet Union was born. In Britain and France, there was an atmosphere of joining hands with the communists. So in the end, Britain and France only look at public opinion and missed the timing to join hands with the Soviets. Anyway, Germany was now preparing for a full-scale armed invasion. So far, Germany had taken over Austria and the Sudetenland of Czechoslovakia without a drop of blood. Now the armed invasion of Poland marked the beginning of another war, eventually on September 1st, 1939. Tanks from Germany crossed the Polish border following the preemptive strike order of grandmother died. The ambition of one man, Hitler, was the official opening of the Second World War. In the wake of the German offensive, the Polish army was helplessly destroyed within 2 weeks. The difference in air power between the two countries was decisive in this result. The German dive bomber we called the Stuka was the first monster fighter they had never seen for the Polish people at that time. Moreover, when 600,000 Soviet troops from the east joined, Poland had no other option but to kneel. England and France at this time couldn't just skip it. 2 days after Germany attacked Poland, the Allies declared war on Germany. But that was it. Britain and France, still traumatized by the war, only helped Poland with their wars. In the end, Germany, which occupied Poland by force, opened fire in the dreadful Second World War. The next target was France, the target of Hitler's hatred. But in France, there was one thing people believed in, that was the Maginot Line, an underground fortress built along the French-German border. The Maginot Line was created by André Maginot, the French defense minister, built underground about 800 kilometers along the French-German border. This fortress was a self-sufficient and strong underground city, and it was a tight defense line with weapons such as long-range artillery. If there was one small problem with this invincible Maginot Line, it was that there was a gap in the middle of about 7 kilometers. The French thought it would be difficult to get through anyway because the forest was highly dense. But that was when passing as infantry as in World War I. Nazi German forces in 1940 drove their tanks through the dense forest. The French army collapsed and soon the Germans surrounded the main French army from both sides. However, there were also British troops who had crossed the sea within this encircling net. The situation in Britain was rather serious. The British army had about 190,000 soldiers confined here. It would be a big problem if they were annihilated. The Allies ordered the soldiers trapped in the siege to assemble at Dunkirk, a coastal city. On May 26, 1940, an operation began to evacuate the Allied soldiers, especially the British, who had assembled in Dunkirk. But they were running out of ships to get so many soldiers to England. Then a miracle happened. About 700 ships, including numerous civilian ships, luxury yachts of the nobles, and even fishing boats were flocking to the Dunkirk coast. Numerous civilians voluntarily drove ships from England to save young soldiers, and they returned to England safely, carrying the soldiers even in overcapacity. It was like a miracle that about 330,000 soldiers escaped from Dunkirk, while the Germans stopped advancing.